Gamespot has been headquartered at various spots around San Francisco since its inception back in 1996, but during that time, hundreds of people have walked in and walked out of its many doors. A website is nothing without the people behind it, so today I'm going to step away from the games and focus this video on some of the people who made Gamespot what it is over the past 2 decades. The people who wrote the reviews, edited the videos, and built the website. The people who inspired people like me to get involved in this line of work. And apologies in advance to everyone who I leave out. Your endeavors are greatly appreciated, but this video can only be so long. I want to start off with the guy who made me want to do this work in the first place. Rich Gallup started at Gamespot as an intern for the live team, but eventually became the host and producer of the site's seminal live show, On the Spot. He and his mysterious grey eyebrow were the face of the site for nearly half a decade, hosting several of Gamespot's E3 live shows. He eventually left the site in August of 2007, moved to the East Coast, and joined Curt Schilling's 38 Studios as lead producer. The developers of Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning and the unreleased MMO codenamed Project Copernicus would eventually go bankrupt when a loan guarantee from the state of Rhode Island would turn sour. But Rich bounced back, landing a job at Disruptor Beam, where he now works as EP of a bunch of games, including Star Trek Timelines and Game of Thrones Ascent. If you miss him, you can catch his infrequent appearances on our sister site, Giant Bomb. Speaking of which, GiantBomb.com, founded by Jeff Gerstmann and Ryan Davis, was staffed by a large number of former Gamespot employees, including Vinny Caravella, Brad Shoemaker, and Alex Navarro, all of whom can still be found on the site. But before Jeff's controversial termination in 2007, he had spent 11 years at Gamespot, eventually rising to the role of editorial director. During that time, he himself published over 1,000 reviews and became one of the leading voices in the industry. He founded Giant Bomb with Ryan Davis, an equally prolific reviewer whose cutting humor became a staple of Gamespot's video productions during his tenure. Upon leaving, Ryan would become host of the Giant Bombcast, one of the most popular gaming podcasts in the world. As you probably know, Ryan tragically passed away in July of 2013, but a testament to his enduring popularity was how the online gaming community reacted. His life was celebrated in meetups attended by fans all around the world. Perhaps as prolific as Jeff was Justin Calvert, who spent 14 years at Gamespot, both in our London office and San Francisco, eventually becoming editor-in-chief. He left the site in August of 2014 and became senior management of content services for the US wing of World of Tanks creator Wargaming. But he left them earlier this year and has just moved south to Los Angeles to work for Blizzard Entertainment. Sophia Tong was editor at Gamespot for 3.5 years before she left in 2011. Since then, she became the editor-in-chief of Games Radar, then the global editor-in-chief for all of Future US, and she just recently joined Twitch as publisher and developer relations manager. In fact, the fast-expanding Twitch has become the home of a number of ex-Gamespot employees in recent months. Sean McInnes wrote previews, reviews, and hosted videos for over 7 years before leaving in 2014, and he recently joined Twitch as publisher and developer relations manager. Josh Shaw and Dan Mahoric, responsible for keeping all of our awesome live streams up and running over the past couple of years, now help produce Twitch's in-house live stream content. But let's leave the Bay Area for a moment and check in on some of our international friends. My good buddy Johnny Chiodini, host of Feedbackula and a half dozen other productions out of the Gamespot UK office, is now creating wonderful work over at Eurogamer. Mark Walton left Gamespot after 5 years of excellent writing to join Ars Technica UK, where you can still find him today. Jane Douglas has since founded the tremendously successful YouTube channel Outside Xbox. Partners in crime Cameron Robinson and Seb Ford have their very own YouTube channel too, but they also founded the successful video production company Double Jump. My old flatmate Martin Gaston, the smartest person I've ever worked with, was news editor at Gamespot for 1.5 years. He eventually became the social marketing manager for EMEA, but has since left that job and is considering a new direction. Selfishly, I'm hoping he gets back to writing. Since we're flying, we might as well check in on our Australian colleagues. Dan Chiappini was an editor at Gamespot AU for over 6.5 years. He's now PR manager for the one and only Blizzard Entertainment. Prior to landing a job as associate editor at our Sydney offices, Laura Parker worked as a news reporter for the Sydney Morning Herald. She left Gamespot after 5 years to move to New York, where she now works as a contributing writer for the New York Times and a commissioning editor for The Guardian. As a freelance writer, she's also contributed to publications including The New Yorker, Vanity Fair, and Rolling Stone. And on top of that, she's currently writing a non-fiction book about video games and positive social change. It'll be published by Macmillan in January of next year. As a fan of this site for years before I worked here, it would be impossible for me not to mention Jodie Robinson, GameSpot's community manager and the bedrock for the GameSpot community for almost a decade. She now works as community program specialist for League of Legends creator Riot Games. Greg Kasavin was the EIC of the site once he departed his decade-long tenure at GameSpot back in January of 2007. He subsequently worked at EA as a producer, helping ship Command & Conquer Red Alert 3. He then worked at Jaeger and helped them market the wonderful Spec Ops: The Line. But today he makes his very own games. As creative director of Supergiant Games, he helped design and write the wonderful Bastion and Transistor. Supergiant are currently working on their third game, Pyre. Tyler Weingartner worked as a producer and editor on GameSpot for years, working on such projects as Lost Between Levels. He now shoots incredible work as video producer for Make Magazine. My dear friend Andy Bauman, who I consider the best cameraman the site ever had, left GameSpot earlier this year and now works just down the road at Ubisoft, alongside the prolific former GameSpot editor-at-large, Giancarlo Veronini. Lark Anderson worked at the site for almost 10 years before leaving earlier this month. He's on vacation in Europe right now, awaiting his next adventure. Brian Ekberg wrote and hosted shows for 6 years before joining Microsoft as a community manager, mostly working on the Forza franchise. His co-host on the lineup, Aaron Thomas, now works as a content specialist for Sony. Former VP of Programming and Teenage Games Master contributor John Davison has recently launched Glixel, a new video game website from the publisher of Rolling Stone. Kerry Goose was feature editor on GameSpot back in the mid-2000s. She's since had a rich career in games development. She worked as a designer and producer at Mythic and is almost into her 7th year working at EA. She currently works as lead producer of their incredibly popular mobile game, The Simpsons Tapped Out. Like myself, Kevin Van Ord and Carolyn Pettit arose from the GameSpot community. Carolyn wrote incredible reviews and lent her brave and unique voice to GameSpot for almost 4 years. She now works alongside Anita Sarkeesian at Feminist Frequency. Kevin Van Ord worked at GameSpot for 8 years, starting out as a tournament coordinator and eventually rising to reviews editor. He published over 700 reviews during his time at the site, but now lends his writing talents to video games. He worked as English editor for MMO developer Tryon Worlds and has recently taken up a job at Larian Studios, where he'll be helping to write a sequel to Divinity: Original Sin. This also means he's moving to Belgium in a few months. Enjoy the waffles, Kevin. San Francisco will miss you. In fact, we miss a lot of our old colleagues. The countless number of folks who kept our videos looking great and the site staying up. People like Benito Gonzalez, Joy Talent, Werner Goff, Alexis Skagisa, Ryan McDonald, who ran GameSpot's video for an incredible 18.5 years, who figured out how to live stream video games a decade before it made any money, who produced dozens of timeless shows. He now runs his own production company and tries to save the world a little bit with Help Worldwide. And then there's the incredible Homer Camarabara, who put a smile on GameSpot viewers' faces for over 6 years. He spent some time at Sony and now works making videos pop on the other side of the bay at 2K Games. Brendan Sinclair wrote thousands of news articles and hosted the Hotspot during his 7-year tour at GameSpot. He's since moved back to his native Canada, where he works as a senior editor at gamesindustry.biz. You can catch him with Carolyn Pettit and former reviewer Tom McShay, who wrote for the site for 6 years, on their new podcast, The Crockpot. These are just a small handful of the dozens of people who have left their mark on GameSpot over the past 2 decades. People who love games at their time at GameSpot and, for the most part, continue to find work in games after they left the site. So on behalf of GameSpot, and as a long-time fan of this site, I want to thank them and everybody I failed to mention for contributing to the wonderful grand old story of GameSpot. And also thanks to you for watching, reading and commenting on all of our work over the past 2 decades. Here's to 2 more.